Fantastic. Okie dokie. So we are talking about the power analysis. I didn't have a chance to read the additional article you sent me last week. Thank you for doing that. But I can send it out to the group, or if there's any big take home things that you think we should know.
Yeah, I'm still definitely working through it. I mean, it's specifically like they're introducing a new method for cross-classified models for power analysis.
Okay, yeah.
And it's like specifically 2-level cross-classified. But it seems interesting. I do think that the introduction helped me understand the reading from today.
Oh,
That was kind of nice to think about comparisons between like t-tests and MLM and how, yeah.
okay.
I don't know.
That's good advice. Yeah, I'll send it out to everybody, just so they have it for their records too. It's nice to know a good article, explanatory article. So I guess one of the things that I liked and was also concerned about was the very specific 30-30 rule, or
yeah, 30, 30, 50, 20, 110.
Yeah. And definitely made me want to go find articles for all the work I do with couples and dyads, because so often I only have 2 people in a group, and what that might look like. A lot of people, and just go visit that, because it's not like a type of MLM that I created. Like a lot of people do it, and just dig into that.
Yeah, I was having a hard time making sense of it in terms of like, typically we're not doing multi-stage or like stratified random sampling. We're like treating that as the group. It's like the stimuli stuff. And so like technically we're treating like the stimulus is the group, right?
Right.
And so like
Right.
we end up with tons of maybe on either side, maybe just a few groups, but like tons of people, or a ton of groups then with like just a few
handful of people.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think this fits onto a lot of the work that I do either, but it's the work that seems like we all do. It's not like we're creating this. It's like something that is understood that it's okay to do with MLM, but maybe there are other resources out there that would add to this to say it's okay. The other thing that it made me think about, well, I mean, 2 things. My goodness, the amount of funds people must have to run these models. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking also, like, if we're thinking about healthcare and clinics or time points nested within people, in order to do this, I have to have 30 people. Okay, that's not terrible, but 30 time points, like, that's crazy. No one is able to retain people for that long, unless it's like daily diaries type of stuff. But even for 30 days, that's a long time to do a daily diary study. So a lot of this, I think, is for like an ideal situation with a very, very specific type of study. So does that mean that the offshoots, when we don't do the 30-30, is there a different type of analysis that we should be running, like they talked about, or a different type of estimator? They talked about maximum likelihood robust. Like, maybe if it doesn't fit this model, then we should always be running kind of a more non-parametric type of estimator to help with those standard errors, improve those estimates. Or should we always be running this? And I don't think they talked about it here. But I know in M+ we can run a Monte Carlo estimator, which is different than maximum likelihood. It allows for more missing data. So maybe we should just be running different types of estimators and integration models for data that doesn't perfectly match onto this 30-30.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? What was your kind of conclusion of, especially the first bit of this chapter?
It just seemed like, I was like, it's always nice to have some sort of like general rule, but it didn't feel like it would fit. And I was having a hard time making sense of it to some degree in context of the stuff that I do. But I know people use it for, much smaller group, like number of groups and participants.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is interesting. Because the other thing I was thinking about is like they treated like 70% hours like in that area as being like sufficient power, 75, I think whereas like now, at least from what I've heard, is like if you don't not at least 90 or above, then it's like so they're like papers are looking or like journals are looking for like 90% or above. And so that just increases the
threshold,
number, I mean the number of participants and groups you're gonna need.
So,
I think the other thing that I was having a hard time with is so like for fixed FX it was 30-30, but then they didn't necessarily go into like we do have cross-level interactions, it's 50-20 random. I guess like as you get more levels.
Oh yeah, they didn't even go into 3
your
levels.
requirements, and then cross-classified too. How does that change?
Yeah, cross-classified, I would think that we would really like. Sorry, I think the like when we go into a 3-level model, my understanding is that 30-30 would be the top. So whatever that power estimate, it's like the top level, but that grows exponentially, right? So if you're top level, hey.
I'm gonna have to put in the electronic locks on that.
So then the 9.
Yeah.
I'm not the person in this situation, so I don't know if it's.
Because with the manual 5-button ones, there's a hole right here.
Yeah.
And the way I had to line it all up, that hole is gonna be shut. And so my foreman said,
I mean,
so.
it's I'm responsive to that. So as long as all of the nursing improves that, I mean, there's nothing you can do it. It has to be done.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're gonna pay it out of
Which, I would love for you to talk about that.
I'm just gonna put a note.
But anyway, I mean, that's fine, I don't know how that.
Yeah, because I have to put a plate here. And you can do the plate 2 different ways. So if I do the plate one way, it's gonna stick all the way down here on the left.
Yeah.
So I gotta flip it. I gotta flip this end around so it can higher. Go into here.
Yeah.
Goes off and going through metal and concrete. Glass experience.
And that would be very, the guy who came originally to check the locks, I was thinking, he said it would probably have to be the 9, the way it's figures been said, and then, but all of the nursing.
I'm gonna go back to the stop.
Sorry about that. I don't know what I should be doing actually is sharing screen so they can see what we're doing. So I think it would then grow kind of exponentially down to the bottom is my understanding of that.
Okay.
But I agree with what you're saying, that it's nice to know kind of like the baseline, general, very broad stroke recommendation, but for any specific study you're doing, I think that there would be other simulations you would need to find, or do the other end of like a power achieved, perhaps. What I have done is, any chance I can for longitudinal data, I pop over to a growth curve model,
Mhm.
because it's kind of the same thing and it's easier to estimate power because it's basically a structural equation model is what linear growth curve model is. It's easier to estimate power. Or I go over to Monte Carlo integration, and not use maximum likelihood, which is almost like a bootstrapping method for estimating parameters. And then I talk about also how the sample power might not be adequate for this. So replicate the findings would be important. So those are kind of all of the kind of the boxes that I check off in order to like justify a smaller sample size, is doing all of those
Okay.
things, because it's for some samples, especially for the work that we do in healthcare, finding 30 clinics, like sometimes you're lucky if you find a clinic that's willing to do this, but then I guess that wouldn't be nested models. But 30 people across 30 time points is just insane. Like that's really, really challenging to do. So I think sometimes in these higher level statistics, understanding the baseline expectations for sample size, or even like understanding normality and those assumptions is really, really important to understand why they're there. So that way, if your model doesn't fit into that, you can explain what might be some issues, but how you're overcoming those issues too with the data set that you have. This is where like the art of statistics comes into play a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like my favorite part of statistics, when you manipulate it to work for you. What are some other thoughts about this that you had? And if not, then I skimmed this Z-test portion of it. So and some other parts, like the a priori stuff, but
There's the program, and I can't remember the name of it, that they recommended. There we go.
but look at these sample sizes that they're dealing with. Like it's just so huge. You'd never be able to, you never stop collecting data.
Oh, this, yeah, Pin T. Pint power estimator.
What page?
I don't know where they first talk about it. I mean, they talk about it on 252.
Okay, I understand what we're doing with pages. Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe 243 is the first one I thought about it. This wasn't clear, I was just curious if we had any experience with it.
No, the only software program I've really used, I mean, this calculation of Cohen's D, it makes sense. It's how I do Cohen's D for coefficients. It's like this. If I'm translating like um, a, a, a B to a Cohen's D, it's how I do it by hand. I do G power, which doesn't do this very well. It doesn't do multi-level model well, but if I still don't see the mention of, am I on the wrong page?
Like end of 242, beginning of 242.
I was on the wrong page. I wonder if they're I wonder if their program is free.
It is, I just found it. Went to get it before.
Oh, that's good. Not Pinterest.
That's exactly what it did for me when I said I put in, yeah, an MLM and it came up, otherwise you'd get fine. Yeah.
Oh, yes, indeed.
The MLM. The first one is one I went to and it has a place to download and then it has their username.
I'm gonna put this in the chat because I think it will download. Or maybe for everybody. Textbook, macros. Textbook. Oh, there it is, number 3. Standard error symbol size. Download, here's the Windows. Or we only have Windows. Hold on. Old DOS, no, it's not.
Yeah, maybe it's just a Windows.
Well, that's good to know. That's a really good. Here's a non-parametric scale for. I don't know if that fits for us. So that's something to play around with. rather than G power. And if you don't want to just use the standard rule of thumb.
Yeah,
Have you downloaded it?
I can't, I was just trying to read through the.
You can do it right now.
So I think it may also be limited to 2 levels.
Oh. What? Okay, well, that was a really quick download. Number of one level variables. Number of these with fixed effects only. I assume this means independent variables.
For the number of level 1 variables.
Right, yeah. Cause it's not, cause otherwise it would be more like a path, multi-level path analysis. Parameter. Oh, it is challenging to understand. Okay, so it definitely probably needs the handbook.
Yeah. It's the number of valuable variables.
Parameter input, please move this window away from shared application. Oh, I understand. I think I'm not sharing my full screen. So this would definitely be power achieved. You wouldn't be able to do this a priori because they're wanting the covariance matrix as well. 0.7, which should be the same. 1.45. 865. 0.83. 1.23. 5. Yeah, we're just going to keep them like this.
See, that seems weird, yeah, it seems weird to me that they want you to put in strings, but maybe it's the balance between groups and group size. So now you should have a file somewhere.
Go to my downloads. Nope.
Mine automatically just went to my Windows folder.
Like down here. No.
Like,
Windows. Oh, I should have looked to see what the path was before I did all of this.
There's an opening application that has a download.
mine saved as ax.dat. Or would say that.
Not paint. Doesn't even have the. Well. I'm not sure it's worth our time to do all this.
Yeah,
right
that's
now,
okay.
but-
It's just curious. Good.
No, I have not. It might be helpful if. I think it's particularly a nice resource if, the explanation of how you determined it a priori based on like theoretical and all the models out there and your discussion of a sample size in the limitation section. And either dissertation chair or reviewer and editor asked you to compute a power analysis. I think this would be really nice to have it afterwards if the theoretical understanding of why you chose what you chose and how you had does not suffice.
Yeah, it's interesting that they talk about it in the textbook as being an a priori power analysis, which like a sensitivity analysis.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know how you would reliably estimate most of those parameters.
All right, I will do this later. I'm not gonna do it now. Okay. What else are we thinking we want to talk about, discuss? It doesn't have to be related to sample power either. This is technically our last extension. But. If you want to meet again, I could meet in I could meet in 2 weeks, but I don't know what you guys' schedule looks like. We want to do one more topic. I can meet oh wait, I have on my calendar that we're meeting the 17th. We do have
Yeah, I
one
think
more.
we have one.
Okay, so what do we got? What do we want that meeting to be about? We haven't really done another topic that we wanted to talk about, but we definitely can do another chapter in here. We can go move from MLM and go talk about something else. We could stick with MLM.
Watching your afterwards.
Okay, cool, exciting. We can also move it to the following, right? Technically, we can move it to the 24th.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, let's move it to the 24th. What do you guys want to talk about on the 24th? Let's have a little brainstorming mini sesh about that.
Like I picked some of this stuff, so you should have priority on what's helpful.
Well, I don't know, our stuff over the last month, it's been helpful.
We can do the one thing that we talked about in the beginning is finding a paper or two and seeing if we could. I mean, if we do a paper that I published, we could certainly go back through and look at the analyses that I did for that. Or a paper one of you guys published, we can go and look at that, or we can even look at a paper that you think is really cool and just try and replicate it with some random data that we have, something that we can do. We can switch gears altogether and talk about the structural equation, SE models. The SEM aspect of this class is very different. The data book from that is more like is just draw a picture of a SEM a priori model that you would want to test. So it's very shallow, but it's like a nice little flavor introduction to it. So we could also do like different types of models in SEM. So we could go down that path. I mean, it gives us 3 weeks, so I mean, I think the sky's the limit, because I could really uh dig into something and have more time to like find something specific if there's a topic that you want. What do you think?
One of the things that I've been struggling with is like zero inflated models.
For sure, okay.
And like what actually is like a very basic question of like, what is count data? It's like I do some social media stuff. And so it's like the binary response of like, did they include something or not? Sometimes like, did they include a theme? Did they include a particular emotion word? And so like, it's some people seem to treat it like that as count data, and other people treat it as just like zero inflated because most people don't include it. And like when we should be looking at, yeah, I guess like the different zero inflated things. So like when should we be looking at like Poisson versus something else?
Logistic or zero.
Yeah.
Sure, that's cool. I think if it's binary, you're always gonna do logistics. Sometimes you're gonna do like a non-parametric logistic, but I think logistic is sensitive to a really small threshold of like up to 5% of like the positive indicator of whatever it is.
Oh,
It's quite sensitive to
Okay.
that. Logistic regression is the zero inflated is really reserved for actual truly count data.
okay.
So one way to model count data, one way to think of it is the logic of what count data is. Like, is this a number? Are there decimal points? There's not, then it's probably count data. Like, are you literally counting something? Is it like a number of
We count, yeah, oftentimes we're like count the number of words that relate to a particular emotion, and then the score we end up using most of the time is that score or that count divided by the total number of words.
Yeah, so I think, ooh, that was warm. Can you see that? It's okay. So then I always, because it's a question, also think of like, maybe, I think there's a lot of the work I do. Context, like relationship aggression type work. So I go back to, I mean, it is so strong. Like you're at all. Okay. So go back to the original thought of what normal, like a regular regression. The assumption is that there's a normal distribution of error returns, right? So that's why we're using a linear regression, because everything around the mean or whatever our center happens to be is where the most people fall, and then it falls out like that. So linear regression estimates that beautifully. If there's some skewness, we're gonna have an issue with our standard errors. I've drawn you the picture of the standard errors and why. I have. So we wanted to estimate it beautifully, you know, where it's estimating along this line, so our standard error is not going up or down. It's like a linear association, and that's why we test that. If it's some data, the count data or the binary data on the values, don't look like that, right? So the distribution for count data looks like this, right? With a tail tails off, where the vast majority of your sample is going to be here in the zeros and ones, right? And then it trails on into the count. So we can't use like a normal run of the mill logistic, I mean, a linear regression because our standard errors are gonna be all over the place, right? And that's why we run it, but then we have the link function to be able to interpret the print, right? So we look at what we need odds ratios and things like that. Okay, so that's the background understanding too between count variables, and it just looks different the distribution. But sometimes when we have count data, it's technically count or counting something. But like when we look at the distribution, it looks more normal, right? Like we're counting something, there could be many people that is zeros and ones of whatever it is. Might look a little skewed, you know, like this. But even though it's technically count data, visually the distribution looks like so in those cases, I actually, unless you really want to understand a risk factor, an odds ratio, a risk of developing something or count or additional risk, like you would with a Poisson and how you would look at a Poisson or the regression. If the distribution of your output variable looks and visually and it's skewed, then maybe you're gonna want to run it in out. Or it's like comfort that skewness in the standard error. But you can run that as a standard error. So in the relationship world, the conflict tactics, which is technically a count-ish, like the number of times you do this, but and you average and you sum across all of them, and it ends up kind of looking like something binomial, which is not or it's bimodal, sorry, bimodal, but sometimes it looks even though it's kind of technically not very good, a little bit more like a Likert scale, but it kind of sometimes looks like a count variable, but functions like a normal. It's somewhere weird in between. So for those, I like to either transform the data and use the linear, or just do little tests of normality. Are we looking at a normal data statistically? Is this look normal? Then I run this one.
Okay.
And unless for whatever, for some reason, you are curious about the additional risk of accumulation of whatever. Which for the word count is not something that you're interested in terms of like healthcare, like even something might look normal, but like number of complications for a specific surgery. Sometimes a lot of people are gonna have just one, or some people might have 2 or 3 more than just have absolutely 0. So technically it looks normal, but I'm still interested in the rest of something. So I still would run it as a because I'm left in question. So always go back to what's the distribution. Right, so like, because then you're thinking about how does this map onto like purely statistics, how does this map on this statistics is it a good fit? So with the zeros, it looks like this, it's like
Yeah.
and sometimes with this, you can run a zero inflated with some fairly variables. And sometimes if it's tons of zeros and like a few ones and maybe like 1, 3 and 1, 4. Sometimes it makes sense to examine these. Are these people like qualitatively different than the person who just answered 1? Would it make sense to make this binary, so we combine these into a 1 or more? Would it make sense if there's a few of these and you have a large sample size, are these people outliers? Like what happens if we include them and not include them in the model? Are those models from getting a wildly different result? Then that means that these 5 people are really driving whatever statistical factors we're seeing. So always digging into your data and seeing who's influencing this effect. If it is a 0 inflated pool, that's that's definitely something that is good to run your data if it is zero inflated, but is it zero inflated because of 5 people, right? Or should it be, right? So. All of that and running a couple of tests. And as you continue your statistical career, in 10 years, we'll have run hundreds and hundreds of models. So you'll have more of a back understanding of like, what will it look like? What to anticipate when your data looks kind of okay, what are I like to think of, maybe not myself, maybe we'll look myself in 10 years, but I'm starting to think to the point where it's like, you know, like an army jet or something like that, a missile comes in, it's like a drop down menu of a bunch of things that like could happen. So that's like whenever I see a data set, like that's my first thing, is like an option menu of things that drop down that could happen or that I might need to do, and like I still need to cross them off, and then I'm like, okay, this is the statistic that needs to best for this. Excellent metaphor, I really should work on it. Okay. Is that what it's called? Sometimes I can't explain it.
Yeah, I mean, looking at our data is like, it's positively skewed, but it's like.
But not.
Thousands of zeros to every one kind of thing.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, and we'll see when we get the next set, but, so the recommendation of our group, like, latest is to log transform it.
1,000 zeros to every one, so it's binary.
Well, like every one to like anything, so it's not binary, but yeah, we're.
So the other option is, because that also sounds. It's the your data as positive. The other option, especially if you're getting thousands of data points, the other option is to. Let me try and think of it. It'll come up. So where you either randomly select the zeros, or you purposefully select them to map onto what you have. So your ratio becomes better.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
you map, you see it a lot in like, not risk assessment, but like a rare disease, and we want to know what maybe makes these individuals different or similar from people who don't develop the disease, especially compared if we match them on demographic factors or even same health, like underlying conditions. What is the difference between these two groups of people? One develops it and one doesn't. So that sounds like what maybe we could do is like select sub-select your group of zeros to match on demographic factors, which would be a really strong model too, because it's almost like it's a way of after like almost randomizing to like accounting for differences.
Yeah.
For that. Oh, if only I could think of that term off the top of my head. Maybe I do need like another cup of coffee. It's in SPSS, that's why I'm bringing it up. All right. Answer that question. And you'll need to go soon. So what are we doing next on the 24th?
You feel free with that? Yeah, I do too.
Oh yeah, because you guys had the whole entire class of SEO. Well, also, you don't have to meet.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to go through a paper and try and
Okay.
look at the results and.
Do you guys have a paper you are thinking of that you want to do?
No.
So why don't I I'm meeting with our nursing students tomorrow. So why don't I brainstorm with them and see what kind of paper they're interested in. And then we'll crowdsource Maybe I'll put 3 and you guys will tell me which ones that you guys like most. Very cool. All right. I believe we're done. So long.